Hi, everybody. We are the Non-Prophets. This show is brought to you by the Atheist Community of Austin. I'm your host, Jeff Dee. Vic Farrow. Farrow is our co-host. Say hi, Vic.
Hi, Vic.
And our producer is Russell Glasser. Today's opening music was Merely a Man by XTC, and that's what we non-prophets are. We are merely men. We have no psychic powers, no angels talking to us over our shoulders, no devil on one shoulder, angel on the other shoulder, supernatural powers coming down and telling us what is going to happen in the future. We figure it out using just the power of our own brains. Yes, Vic?
Oh, nothing. I was going to make a Superman joke, but it's too late now.
I'm sorry. We are live January 5, 2002. The Atheist Community of Austin, a non-profit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We have weekly meetings Sunday mornings at the Hot Jumbo Bagel Shop at 307 West 5th Street at 10:30 a.m., except for the first Sunday of each month, which will, like tomorrow, when we have our lecture series at 11 a.m., in the Longhorn Room of Fur's Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. There will be no speaker scheduled for tomorrow. Instead, we're going to be holding a planning session for our upcoming church-state separation rally on the steps of the Texas State Capitol, scheduled for January 12th. Ooh, let's see. For more information, you can call our voicemail number at 512-371-2911 or visit the ACA website at www.atheist-community.org. If you're out there over the internet listening to our show and you want to chat with other people who are listening, or even have a chance for your questions to be noticed and read and answered by us during the broadcast, check out the Atheist Network chat room. That's www.atheistnetwork.com. We got a few people in there already chatting away, and the more the merrier. Vic, would you like to start into news now?
Okay, fine with me. Went through my collection of bookmarked news sources, came up with a few things. One, the Christian Coalition has settled a multi-million-dollar racial discrimination lawsuit by black employees by paying $325,000 in return for the workers' promise of permanent silence on the case. Isn't that special?
Is that each?
I doubt it. If I understand right, they were ushering the black employees through the back door to keep the important people from seeing them, or something to that effect.
Yep, that's what I read in another copy of that story.
These guys are just getting creepier by the day. Neither side would confirm details of the settlement reached quietly last week, but sources involved in the negotiations said several lawsuits would be dropped by 12 current and former employees in exchange for a lump sum payment to be distributed by the plaintiff's employees. The matter has been resolved amicably, said George Dumar, the Washington attorney who represented the employees. He said confidential agreement precluded him from making any further comment. Basically, they bought silence. We won't sue you, and we'll give you money. Separately, several other former coalition employees have gone to the FBI with accusations that the group defrauded hundreds of donors who participated in the inaugural gala in the Washington Hilton Hotel. Candace Wheeler, Mrs. Combs' former administrative assistant, said Trent Barton, a former coalition employee who joined the discrimination lawsuit, confirmed that an FBI special agent from Northern Virginia is inquiring about financial irregularities involving at least 400 of 200 donors to the coalition's inaugural event. Okay, the Christian Coalition just makes me sick.
Now, do you have in the copy of that story that I found? It said that. It said that that these people who were discriminated against feared a retribution by the Christian Coalition. So in July, U.S. District Court Ricardo M. Urbina ruled that the employees had shown that they were likely to prevail in the case and issued an injunction ordering the Christian Coalition not to retaliate against them.
Well, my story says in Judge Urbina's order, he dismissed out of hand the coalition's arguments that it had not discriminated or retaliated against black employees. The judge said he was issuing a preliminary injunction because he believed the plaintiffs would win in their case on its merits if it went to the grand jury at this time. So essentially, the judges confirmed that they were discriminating. But they bought their way out of it, so they're free and clear on it. No one can say anything.
So I guess we're going to have to do away with turn the other cheek, huh? Instead, it's, if you slap your neighbor and he goes to complain, just slip him $20.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think the Christian Coalition needs what's referred to in the military as a kiwi injection. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's where you put a nice coat of kiwi on your shoe and then you proceed to kick. Anyway. Here comes something funny from Falwell, as if there wasn't anything funny about Falwell.
It's getting to be every week with this guy.
You don't get to be voted the most stupid man in the world. He was the stupidest, idiot of the year. That's what it was. Mad Magazine.
On Mad Magazine, right?
You don't get to be idiot of the year for nothing. Falwell sent out a confidential letter, which is not so confidential anymore. According to a report in Newsweek, the Democratic Party, this is according to Falwell in his letter, the Democratic Party officials plan to smear fundamentalist Christians who back the Bush administration by actually linking us to the Taliban. Shouldn't be a hard thing to link. The Newsweek account said that the top party strategists are planning a daring assault on the most critical turf of politics, the cultural mainstream. The theory goes like this, explained in News Magazine. Our enemy in Afghanistan is religious, extremist, and intolerant. It's therefore more important than ever to honor the ideas of tolerance, religious, sexual, racial, reproductive at home. And the GOP is out of the mainstream. Some Democrats will argue this year because it's too dependent upon the intolerant religious right. Wait a minute, I missed something. Anyway, the Taliban controlled 90% of Afghanistan and established a unrelenting, harsh regime. And Falwell's complaining, this is the group with whom we, conservative Christians, are being compared. And I'd laugh if it were not so frightening. Well, you should be afraid.
Yeah, Falwell, if it wasn't for the fact that you and your cronies are trying to take advantage of the horrifying acts of September 11 in order to raise a bunch of money, if you weren't using that as an opportunity to dig your heels in rather than as an opportunity to, do what you claim you do, which is make people feel better, then we wouldn't be comparing you to religious, Muslim terrorist extremists.
But when you make statements like blaming the attacks on people who had absolutely nothing to do with it, just to line your own pocket or to pat yourself on the back, or for whatever reason you did that, how are you not different from the Taliban? And if you was ever to become in power, how would you not be different from the Taliban? Falwell's a scary individual, but fortunately, he's kind of stupid, so, don't have to worry too much about him.
All right, what else you got?
This, that, and the other thing. Don't forget the other thing. In Louisville, Kentucky, those who want the Ten Commandments posted in Kentucky courthouses say history is on their side. A civil liberties group that wants the displays taken down makes the same claim. In one corner of the legal fight, which has been waged from the courthouse to the schools in rural Kentucky and to federal courtroom, is the American Civil Liberties Union of Kentucky, and cites the separation of church and state. On the opposite side of are county officials, backed by a conservative legal group, who claim that the commandments played a historic role in the nation's development. As such, they contend posting the commandments in public buildings is permissible as part of an educational or comparative religion displays. My question is, if you're putting the Ten Commandments up there, what other tenets are you putting up there? And not, how is it a comparative religion display? That makes no sense at all.
Right. There's nothing there about the American Indian roots of our own Constitution, right? Those American Indians were, not Christians.
Not until they were conquered. Most of the Kentucky displays are surrounded by such historic documents as the Magna Carta and the Mayflower Compact, which also really don't have much to do with America's founding.
The Magna Carta is kind of interesting because, at least it is a it shows the beginnings of the weakening of this whole idea of a special class that absolutely rules everybody else, right? Well, that's kind of interesting. The Mayflower Compact, it's historical, but it's got nothing to do with the roots of American government. Not any. The only reason that they like to have that up there for comparison is, you know what they have in that thing? That says God over and over and over again in the Mayflower Compact.
Well, according to them, there would be no America if it hadn't been for the particular Protestant Christian God. Now, this is not church-state related. This is not church-state related. It's just plain funny. Canberra, Australia. Drug dealers are using Harry Potter to try to cast a spell over the young Australian partygoers with a new ecstasy drug doing the rounds named after the popular fictional schoolboy wizard. The Australian Medical Association, also called the AMA, said that it's an internet chat site about drug use indicated Harry Potter tablets containing an amphetamine MDMA, also known as ecstasy, were now on sale in Australia. That struck me as crazy that they're using Harry Potter to sell drugs.
So you're saying the fundamentalists have been right about Harry Potter all along? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Harry Potter will make you do drugs.
Okay.
This is a commentary. It has nothing to do with church, so I'm going to bypass it.
Well, I got some more news over here. Take it. Okay. I've got a story here about yet another minister getting caught for child molesting. And I'm not going to read it because I happen to also stumble across a story today about a geologist arrested for child molestation. So we're going to just call that even. And, one each, no change to the score. But hang to your shorts, everybody. This is the most horrifying thing you'll have ever heard. 8-year-old sacrificed by temple priest in India. We're not leaping back to the Middle Ages here. We're not talking about hundreds or thousands of years ago. This was last Thursday this story came out. In a gruesome incident, a temple priest chopped off the head of an 8-year-old boy with a dagger to propitiate a deity by human sacrifice in a town in Bijnor district, police said on Thursday. The incident came to light when the boy, hailing from Kalagar, was reported missing after he had gone to the Shiv temple to play with his friends, he said. His body was later recovered from the nearby bushes. On interrogation, the priest confessed to the crime, police said, adding that the priest had been arrested. And when I showed my wife this story, my wife Amanda, the story this morning, she said, that this man that did this, the human sacrifice, not insane, he's religious.
Yep.
And that is exactly the point.
It seems that religion will do more than cause you to want to fly an airplane into the side of a building, or cut off a kid's head, or beat children mercifully, or make them dig trenches in the mud and the cold and get them sick. And there's no end to this.
Right. And it's like I've heard wise people say, people are not perfect, but it takes something like religion to get them to be absolutely or worst that they could possibly be. This again is the Non-Prophets. We are live on the Atheist Network today, January 5, 2002. Got some more general announcements here. National Atheist Ombuds is accepting reports of slurs, defamation, or discrimination against atheists or other non-believers in the U.S. media. If you encounter a thing like that, drop them a note by emailing ombuds@atheism.org. Please remember to include as many details as possible and news source where applicable. Incidents will be reported to participating local and national non-theist organizations who have agreed to distribute press releases regarding the reported subject matter. There will be a church-state separation rally at the state courthouse in Austin, Texas on January 12 at 11 a.m. to commemorate the 200th anniversary of Jefferson's letter to the Danbury Baptists, in which he coined the phrase wall of separation between church and state. For more information on that, do we have something on that on the website now, Russell? At www.atheist-community.org you can get all the info you need. The Third International Rationalist Conference is taking place in New Delhi, India in February, and boy, it appears that India could use a dose of rationalism about now. Not merely because of crazy priests cutting children's heads off, but also because they're, this close from a big old war with Pakistan. Any correspondence can be addressed to the Third International Rationalist Conference at conference@rationalistinternational.net. And for more information, visit their website, www.rationalistinternational.net. There's going to be a creation-evolution debate also here in Austin, Texas on February 15 at 6:30 p.m. on the UT campus in UTC 2.112A. Tickets are $5. The event was organized by members of Helping Austin Area Schools, or HAAS, a registered student organization at the University of Texas at Austin with concerns about the quality of science education in our public schools. They are expecting mostly Christians in the audience, however, and have therefore extended a special invitation to non-believers. For information on getting tickets, email Doug Keller. That's pogie@mail.utexas.edu. That's POUGIE at mail.utexas.edu. He is a philosophy senior at UT. Eat More Christians t-shirts are available online. This is for those of you who have the Chick-fil-A restaurant chain in your states. If you've ever been in one of those places, you know that it is a fundamentalist Christian fast food chain, and they have an ad campaign going which features 3 cows standing on their hind legs with badly written signs saying, "Eat more chicken," because, of course, you know, they're cow. They don't want you to eat cows. So the Eat More Christians t-shirts feature 3 lions standing on their hind legs with badly lettered signs saying, "Eat More Christians." Proceeds from the sales of Eat More Christians t-shirts will go to the toward the cost of running and promoting this fine program you're listening to right here.
What's the URL?
Oh, the URL is www.cafepress.com/nogods. Once again, www.cafepress.com/nogods. Okay, once again, a chat reminder. Those of you listening to us on the internet, if you want to get together with other listeners during the show and chat about what we're talking about, exchange ideas, or even ask us questions, you can go to the Atheist Network chat room by visiting www.atheistnetwork.com and clicking on the little chat link. The room is slowly filling up there. So, special howdy to everybody in the chat room right now. How you doing, folks? You got more, Vic? You want to do that essay?
I extracted some comments from Rudy Giuliani's farewell address, which he gave in a church adjacent to Ground Zero. In it, he spoke of things that were once considered beyond debate before we arrived at our postmodern relativistic feelings before Act's New Age. Mr. Giuliani said that ideas matter. Ideas that are true, not because he thinks so, but because they have proven themselves over time. And he spoke of ideas that have failed, yet continue to have significant numbers of adherents, people who hold them and care more about maintaining power over others than they do about liberty and independence.
So what do you think he's saying here?
I think he's particularly taking a slap at religion in general.
Wow.
I don't know if he's in a church, but, you know, think about it. Ideas that have proven that have time don't usually come from church.
That's a good point.
The man who got more popular after September 11th than he ever was before,
right.
Could have won the election if he had been able to run just on this one deal alone. I thought that was interesting. He did make comments such as, you know, the ideas that were proven over the test time that had more value than ideas that just came because someone told you so.
Right. Does he get any more specific than that? I see that the essay goes on for a while.
Well, it's actually a commentary on other stuff, but
it's not actually the text of his address.
No.
Okay. All right. Well, we got some old business left over from last week here. Last week I asked our listeners for advice on a book about atheism to send to my preacher mother, and I told you the little story about how Mom sent me a book of propaganda as a Christmas gift, and my phone call back to her saying, cut it out. Bruce Honingford wrote in suggesting Dan Barker's book, Losing Faith in Faith, published by the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and thanks to Bruce's suggestion, I went back and reread some of it, and now I have indeed selected that as the book to send to my mother. In fact, the mail order went out this morning. Again, Bruce, thanks for listening to the show, and thanks for the advice. If you've enjoyed our show, and if you are enjoying our show and want to receive emails reminding you to tune in each week and chat with other listeners between shows, you can join our reminder list by going to groups.yahoo.com/atheist_nonprofits radio show. All one word. That's groups.yahoo.com/group/atheist_nonprofits radio show. It's not .com. Not .com at the end. I think I said nonprofitsradioshow.com. That would have been wrong. The .com is after groupsyahoo.com. Okay. So anyway, good big hand to Wendy Britton for setting up this group and moderating it. We'll put that link on our website also, which is, again, the Atheist Community of Austin at www.atheist-community.org. So those of you who missed it now or couldn't understand my fumbled attempt to relate it, you can go there and check. I'm even handing it to our producer right now so we can deal with it. Okay, and once again, we are live on the Atheist Network. This show is on every week on Saturday from, 1 to 2 Eastern?
Yes.
2 to 3 Central, which is where we're listening, where we're broadcasting from. And we are the Non-Prophets. If you're interested in chatting with other listeners live, the Atheist Network has a chat room. Just go to www.atheistnetwork.com and click the little chat link. Okay, now, this being our first show of a brand new year, it's just as important, this show, as it was last time, which was our last show of a previous year, to do the Rapture Report. This is the part of the show where we let you know all the different ways in which various people are claiming that the world is about to end, and keep you up to date on the fate of those predictions as they come and go, and the world just continues. First of all, we want to open this by relating a prediction of the imminent end of the world where no specific date was given. And all throughout history, people have been making these things, saying soon the world will end, not telling you exactly when, but just putting that blanket claim out there. These, of course, we can't pick a day and say, well, this one for sure isn't true. But if you think about where these predictions are coming from, and I'll give you a little background on each one, the Assyrian clay tablet we referred to last week from 2800 BC, the prediction that the world was going to end soon, written by somebody in 2800 BC? I don't think so. This one, I can only say consider the source. Jim Jones, founder of the People's Temple, started out his ministry giving hope to the disaffected and downtrodden of American society. He was a recipient of many humanitarian awards and was even given a position in the San Francisco city government. Unfortunately, he grew more and more paranoid as the years went by and was haunted by a vision of nuclear war that he had had in his youth. Soon he was affected by delusions of godhood. Many people left his cult disillusioned, and his list of critics and enemies grew. Increasingly paranoid and delusional, Jones led his remaining dying followers to Guyana, where he was convinced he and his flock would survive a global nuclear holocaust he was certain would happen soon.
He expected to survive without killing himself?
Russell is asking how if Jones expected to survive that by killing himself. The killing himself thing comes later. Don't get out of you're jumping ahead in the story. Even in Jonestown, the colony he built, some followers became fearful of Jones' increasing madness. When a number of them tried to flee the country, 5 people, including a visiting U.S. congressman, were gunned down by Jones' thugs. Jones, knowing that the U.S. government would come after them for the murders, ordered his followers to drink cyanide-laced Kool-Aid on November 18, 1978. Over 900 people, including Jones, died, and only a handful survived to tell their hair-raising tale. That's, I would consider a failed prediction of the end of the world from November 18, 1978.
Well, for Jones, the world did end that day.
And for the other 899, I suppose.
I remember that when I was a kid. It was all over the news. That's, they showed the pictures of just bodies laid out everywhere in big circles drinking that nasty Kool-Aid.
Yeah, absolutely horrifying. Let's see. Now, last week I also read you the last section of last year's prophecies, the ones that were slated to occur sometime in the year 2001, but with no specific day given. And now we get to mark all these failed. So here we go. Legend has it that no, I'm not doing that one. I need to remove it from the list because it doesn't actually say 2001. Pyramidologist George Barbarin, subscribing to the concept of the Great Week, predicted that Christ's millennium will begin in 2001. Well, you know, everybody's millennium began in 2001, even the people who thought that just because there were 3 zeros in 2000 that was the millennium. But of course, what he meant was that Jesus was going to come back. Well, sorry, George, didn't happen. According to the Unarius Academy of Science, the Pleiadian Space Brothers would land their UFOs near El Cajon, California, ushering in a new age. Any sign of the spacecraft landing in California? Nope, failed. Earth changes maven Gordon Michael Scallion predicted major Earth changes taking place between 1998 and 2001, culminating in a pole shift. I'm sorry, Gordon.
Major Earth changes every year.
That's true, Russell, but the pole is pretty much where it was all along, and it wanders around a little bit, but only a little bit. And so, sorry, Gordon. No such luck. Nation of Islam numerologist Taineta Muhammad figured that 2001 would be the year of the end. Well, no. Only the year of the end of your credibility, Taineta. Jack Van Impe said that 2001 would see the start of the Great Tribulation. Political chaos, natural disasters, nuclear war, and the worldwide rise of Islam would usher in mankind's final hour. Well, let's see. Let's chalk them off. Political chaos? Yeah, but we got that every year. Natural disasters? Yeah, every year. Nuclear war? No. Sorry, dude. No such luck. I fear we're going to have to go on without radiation for another 365 days. Let's see. Oh, and the worldwide rise of Islam was already going on, so that's not a prediction. A man calling himself the Last Adam had a website where he said, "The hour is coming this year 2001. This earth will be destroyed these year by God. This is an election between the good and evil." This was accompanied by a claim that Jesus is a UFO alien and some of the worst HTML coding ever seen by man. Well, that's fine. The earth was not destroyed that year, 2001, so you're an idiot. Okay. I do not have an address for that website. I'm sorry. I got this secondhand. No, I'm sure that if you do a web search for The Last Adam, if he's still out there and hasn't crawled into the hole he crawled out of, then you may be able to find it yourself. Okay, now we got brand new. These are the ones predicted for this year, and that's they've been dwindling, but they're still coming along at a slow pace, and I keep everybody up to date as best I can. The next one on the schedule is April 14, 2002. This is completely insane. Mike Keller claims that the Doomsgate will open a half second before midnight Israel time on April 14, 2002, followed immediately by the return of Jesus, as well as a nuclear war within 45 days. Of course, previously Mike predicted that Americans would begin living under martial law by mid-1999 because of Y2K engendered chaos, so don't get your hopes up about that Doomsgate. Now, scheduled for occurrence just sometime during the year. Yes, Vic?
Is the Doomsgate anything like Hellmouth?
I haven't a clue. I am also well, I don't want to say religious, but a frequent watcher of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I don't know. Maybe we need to send Buffy out there to Israel on that day to Jesus will come out of the gate and she'll kick his ass. Okay. Now we got some that are scheduled just for some time during this year, so you're not going to hear these from me often, but you will definitely hear of them again at the end of the year, assuming none of them will come true. Okay. Sometime in 2002, the end of the world, according to Church Universal and Triumphant leader Elizabeth Clare Prophet. You may have heard of her. She's a well-known New Age, kind of Christian, kind of UFO kook. The end of the world following a 12-year period of devastation and nuclear war. Hey, you know what? I'm just going to chalk this one off. We have not had a 12-year period of devastation and nuclear war, have we? We've had no nuclear war in the last 12 years, as far as I can remember.
Or if you were at all, then I know.
Am I glowing? No? You lose.
Turn the lights out and find out.
Elizabeth Clare, non-prophet. Welcome to the club. Charles R. Weigel predicts a nuclear judgment on the world's industrialized nations in 2002. Well, Charles, we will keep our eyes peeled for that one. Nuclear bombs are apparently going to do the judging. It's sort of like how when they dunked witches, right? And if they floated, they were a witch, so you hanged them. If they didn't float, they were innocent, but they're dead.
I suppose in a nuclear war, if you're evil and you glow, and if you're not evil, you'll just die.
Yeah. If you're a good person, apparently, according to Charles, you are. Yeah, you either just die or who knows. All right, now we had reinstituted a series that we did on our television show here in Austin on public access, the Tools of Critical Thinking series, and we skipped last week because there's so much to talk about, what with the world about to end and all. So we're going to pick it up here. The last one we did was 2 weeks ago. We were talking about the rule of falsifiability, okay? And here's the recap. If a claim is phrased or defended in such a way as to make it impossible to conceive of evidence that would prove the claim false, then the claim is meaningless and unworthy of serious consideration. If the evidence would be the same whether the claim was true or not, then there's no way to tell whether it is true or not, so why bother? This week's critical thinking tip, and again, these are just tips on how to think straight. Okay, there's nothing here specifically about atheism. If you find, as I have, that thinking clearly leads inevitably to atheism as exclusion, well, good for you. But that is not pre-assumed in these talks. This week's critical thinking tip is the rule of comprehensiveness. The evidence offered in support of any claim must be exhaustive. That is, all of the available evidence must be considered. For obvious reasons, it is never reasonable to consider only the evidence that supports a theory while discarding any evidence that contradicts it. This rule is straightforward and self-apparent and requires little explanation or justification. Nevertheless, it is a rule that is frequently broken by proponents of supernatural claims and by those who adhere to supernatural beliefs. For example, when people believe that Jean Dixon has precognitive ability because she predicted the 1988 election of George Bush, that's not the current one, the previous one, which she did 2 months before the election when every social scientist, media maven, and private citizen in the country was making the same prediction, they typically ignore the thousands of forecasts that Dixon has made that have failed to come true, such as her prediction that John F. Kennedy would not win the presidency in 1960, that World War III would begin in 1958, and that Fidel Castro would die in 1969. If you are willing to be selective in the evidence you consider, you could reasonably conclude that the Earth is flat. But as straightforward as it appears to be, comprehensiveness can sometimes be difficult for the average person to evaluate. For one thing, people may suggest that unanswered questions about a claim constitute evidence against that claim, and then invoke the rule of comprehensiveness. This is frequently intended by opponents of evolutionary theory. In fact, unanswered questions are merely that, unanswered. Open questions certainly indicate that more work remains to be done, and that may lead to the claim being modified or even discarded later. In the meanwhile, lack of knowledge about something cannot be considered evidence about that thing. So, the existence of open questions does not violate the rule of comprehensiveness. Comprehensiveness is only violated if available evidence is ignored. Also, it's easy for anyone to claim that some evidence exists, which the other side is ignoring. To determine whether the cited evidence actually exists or not often requires one to be a specialist in the field, or to spend a lot of time looking up references. Of course, one cannot simply say there is evidence that is not being considered, without being specific about what that evidence is and expect to be taken seriously. On the other hand, if references are offered and you're not already familiar with them, you are obligated by the rule of comprehensiveness to look them up if you really care about finding the truth. That's the rule of comprehensiveness, and this week's tip on critical thinking. Next week, we will talk about the rule of honesty, which states that the evidence offered in support of any claim must be evaluated without self-deception. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Well, so where are we at? Vic, you were not here last week. You were on call.
I was at home listening to the show at home on my computer.
In case some terrible catastrophe befell your apartment complex. You know, the end of the world would pretty much...
That put me out of a job.
Well, first it would give you a lot to do. A lot to fix.
A lot to fix. I don't know if I have enough tools for that. I'll have to check.
So how were your last 2 weeks? We didn't get to talk to you about the holiday season or anything like that. Have any special fun stories?
No, I did absolutely nothing over the silly season except stay out of people's way, because people go completely stark raving mad around the beginning of December, and it doesn't end until after January the 1st. But now it's over, and I can get back to normal life.
I've noticed a lot of those little, dead Darwin fishes and truth fishes eating Darwin fishes and all that kind of stuff at the complex that I live at. Do you have a lot of residents with crazy religious things? You actually get to go into their apartments, don't you?
Unfortunately, I get to go into their apartments. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell that story.
Well, there was one resident who had made a videotape for cable access that made the claim that the planet once was small and that it had expanded, and that's why the continents were all in their present location. He had this little balloon with these little cutouts of all the little countries, and he put them together in one big clump, and he kind of had to shift them so they'd fit. And he made sort of a Pangea thing, and then he blows the balloon up, and they all expand out to their current locations.
And that's his answer to continental drift?
That's his answer to continental drift. It never happened. Continental drift is not true. It's this expanding Earth thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He moved recently, by the way.
Oh, boy.
Well, anyway, I was parked next to a truck the other day that had a bumper sticker that said, "If you're going to live life like there's no God, you better be right." There's these little flames that come up from the bottom of it. And here I am parked with my truck that has an abundance of little fish, one of them of which is a Darwin fish, one of which is a science fish with little rocket fins. And then I have the dead fish, which is just a skeleton of a fish with eyes crossed out. That's contrast.
Yeah.
I get to go into people's houses, that saying that cleanliness is next to godliness. Well, none of them actually really believe that, because I'm not saying that Christians are nasty people, but nasty people tend to be Christians.
You're saying these people are, while professing godliness, are very far from it by that particular standard, by the cleanliness standard.
No.
That is awesome.
I must have skipped church when they were preaching that one.
Now, did I tell you the story of what my mom sent me for Christmas?
Yes, you did.
I told you that off the air. Okay, all right. Well, then I won't burden everyone with that.
I gave everybody for Christmas the same thing I gave them all last year. Nothing. I got one fun thing to do yesterday, though, because Christmas is over and we could take down the decorations we had at work. And so I took the fire hazard, also known as a Christmas tree, and chopped it into little bitty pieces and threw it in the dumpster. I'm going to throw out of that one.
How do you do that chopping? You got one of those wood chippers?
Tree saw. No, I didn't get a tree saw. A true wood chipper. That would have been much more fun. Put it in the chipper and let it come out in little pieces. Now we actually just cut it into small sections and dumped it.
One time my cat, this is when I was a kid, the family cat ate a piece of tinsel. And a couple of days later, there was still hanging out of his ass. Do we have Russell? Do we have questions from the chat room at all?
Exactly. No, we had
comments.
We had Charles making other variations of my phrase. If you're living like there's no God, so he's got living like there's no Zeus, no Anubis, no Allah. Any others? Yeah, a story about your Christmas present.
Okay, all right. We'll do a quick recap because this was the big news last week that pushed everything else off the map. For Christmas, I received a book called The Hand of God from the Templeton Foundation. Now, the Templeton Foundation is the outfit that organized themselves for the purpose of whooping up the claim that scientists are finding more and more reason to justify belief in God. Okay, that is their purpose, and they have conferences and they hold seminars, and they have their pet scientists who are, of course, none of the top-ranking scientists in any of their fields, but just these guys who are especially religious scientists, and they invite them down and pretend like they're experts, and then they get the media to come in and report on this, and they make the claim that science is moving closer to belief in a God. Well, in 1998, Newsweek did a cover story on this, in an issue that had the big blurb on the front, "Science Finds God," which startled me, being an atheist and being rather a fan of science. So I wrote this big review of that article, rebuttal, which is on my website, which, by the way, my website is www.io.com/unigames, UNIGAMES. That is my little game company. And you go to that page and you click on the WWJD link, which is What Worries Jeff D. It takes you to a page of a collection of my essays on various subjects. Well, I wrote a rebuttal to this Science Finds God article, and it rather pissed me off because it seemed to me like anybody reporting on these claims would recognize the fundamental fallacies inherent in the way these claims are being made. But no, this editor at Newsweek, it completely went over her head. All right, so jump back 3 years. Now I'm opening my Christmas presents, and there's this book, The Hand of God. It's essentially a collection of Hubble Space Telescope images, accompanied by these little quotes taken out of context from various people. And, of course, Einstein is in there, which is unfair, because Einstein did not believe in a God, anything like what these people are wanting us to think exists. He just used the word God for nature. Stephen Hawking, who does essentially the same thing, is misquoted in there. But the absolute worst misquote was a misquote of, what's this guy's name? H.L. Mencken, who was a very outspoken critic of religion who wrote newspaper articles in the 1920s. And if you've ever seen the movie Inherit the Wind, he is the character who is the wisecracking reporter guy, right? That's who that's based on. Well, they quote him out of context, saying something to the effect of, we keep trying to kill this stupid religion thing and it keeps coming back. Now, the way they use it in their book, it seems like he's saying that religion has some kind of magical power, that there's some underlying truth that keeps making people believe in it. But no, not at all. Anyway, they quote him anyway. That's all the text in the book except for the introduction, which is a huge thing. It's like a 22-page introduction where this guest person comes in and writes a little essay about how we all ought to believe in God because of what they claim science is finding. So I called my mom and I complained and I said, I don't send you books on atheism, so please don't send me books on religion. And we went back and forth a few times, and she insulted all my atheist friends, and she moaned and wailed about what a bad mother she'd been.
Mom, here we are. If you ever listen,
she's not listening, and she claimed that she wanted to understand all points of view, and I pointed out that I'd seen her library, and nowhere in it is there a single book written by atheists about atheism. So the upshot was that she agreed that she would read a book about atheism that I sent her, as long as I would read the book she sent me. So I've read that book, and we did a review of it last week, and I'm not going to repeat that now. And we talked earlier about how one of our fine listeners advised me to send her Losing Faith in Faith. It's especially appropriate for me to send her that book. I mean, my mom is much more swayed by the emotional arguments than the scientific ones, and so Barker's more personal style, his talking about, at least the first few chapters, he doesn't start getting into technical issues, and he's talking about his personal trek away from theism. That, I think, will be the kind of thing that she'll take seriously. And the other thing is, of course, she is also a minister, so the fact that this is a minister talking about becoming an atheist will resonate. But even more, my mom was a missionary in Cuba before Castro, and so like Dan Barker, who did a lot of his preaching down in Mexico, they both had this experience preaching to the Hispanic community, and so those are things that I think she'll find interesting and appealing, and maybe keep actually reading it instead of throwing it down in disgust. He says, duh, it's obvious that there ain't any gods.
I never got around to reading that book, but I had read two others that are alike type books. It's a narrative about a former preacher getting away from the church and how he come to be like that. One was God Doesn't Live Here Anymore by Skip Porteous, and the other was by a cohort of Billy Graham. His name escapes me. This guy's name escapes me at the moment, but there are two books that deal with the same issue of getting away from the church after having been deeply into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. I went and reread the first few chapters. In fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and reread the whole thing, Losing Faith in Faith, because it was a couple of years ago that I read it, and I couldn't remember exactly what it was like. I was originally leaning away from it as a thing to send my mom, and toward Douglas Kruger's book, What is Atheism? Because I personally liked Kruger's book better, and then I went back and looked at it and said, well, Jeff, you like it better because it's hard-nosed, hard-assed and openly critical in a way that verbally critical in a way that Barker dances around. So it's a much better choice to center that book. I also noticed, on my recent trip to the local big bookstore, and to be a Borders in this case, they have this little religion section, right, that has a small comparative religion shelf, and then the rest of it is all Christian books. And so it had gotten really hard to find atheist books in the comparative religion section. It has suddenly exploded again. There's bunches and bunches of books in there.
I thought I had bought them all. Every time I go to a Borders or a Barnes and Nobles, I look through their sections and if I find atheist-related books that I don't have in my collection, I snatch them up.
Yeah, Russell.
Speaking of mainstream bookstores and the religion sections, I about a year ago was the last time I ventured into like a Walden Books or one of those crappy little mall stores, and I noticed that their religion section was like an entire shelf unto itself, like about 10 rows going across and down, and the science section was half of one shelf. Extremely depressing.
What store was this again?
It was, I don't know, Walden Books or something like that, one of those little chains. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, those places are terrible.
Before we came over here, I stopped over to Half Price Books, which is on the way to where we're at now, and their religion section was pretty large, and I couldn't find a single atheist book in there. I guess because atheists keep our books.
That could be. Our books are actually worth something. I did find that book I was reading before, about the trial of I can't remember the title now. It was about Bertrand Russell. Persecution of Bertrand Russell, right, where he was appointed to a post at the City College of New York, and then the appointment was rescinded because of a big public backlash against the fact he was an atheist. I found a bunch of copies of that at that very same bookstore. It was pretty interesting. I mostly liked it for the comparison between religious attitudes then and now. Interesting and scary. I'm also going to send my mom, the one thing that I notice that almost none of these books address is the big issue with my mother, which is the death question, right? What's going to happen? She is now 70 about, right? And understandably concerned about what her fate might be at the end of her life. And, it's very difficult for us atheists to look at a situation like that and find some, bright spot in it. we try to say, well, it's natural, or you've had a good life and people will remember you and all this kind of stuff. Ultimately I don't buy that either, which is why I'm saving up to get myself chronically suspended. But none of the atheist books that I have seen that I can recall talks about that specific question about souls and afterlife and all that stuff, and and tries to offer a compelling argument not to allow yourself to be swayed by that emotional appeal.
I hadn't thought of that before until you asked me to search through my books to see if I had anything addressing that same question, and they have all kinds of philosophical reasons for not believing in God, but the death question just doesn't come up.
Right. It's a tough one. I mean, because atheists are generally about reason and reality, and so we get stuck holding the bag of the bad parts of reality. We can't deny them. Whereas with religions, they feel entirely free to brush those things under the carpet by making up supernatural afterlives and things. So what I'm going to do to solve that problem is I've got another book here, which I brought with me today, called Science and the Paranormal, Probing the Existence of the Supernatural. And it's a bunch of essays on various supernatural, New Age, and UFO crazy ideas. And there's an essay in here by Isaac Asimov on the question of life after death. And he approaches it historically, looking up the roots of the words soul and spirit, and he goes through the way that those words are used, particularly in the Bible, and what the original Hebrew words that are translated soul or spirit mean. And he comes up with blood is one of the things that used to be considered your life. If you lose your blood, that was your life seeping out of you. In fact, we still have that phrase that we use every once in a while. Breath was another one, right? You breathe out and you breathe back in, and if you're not allowed to breathe back in, then your soul is outside your body and you're dead, right? He goes through all that stuff, and then he makes an analogy, which I'm going to read to you now because we're coming down to the end. Just a couple of minutes left. Let me do Isaac Asimov's analogy from the end of his article, which is entitled "The Simplest Difference." And this article, I'm going to send my mom a copy of this. Let me present an analogy. Suppose one builds an intricate structure out of many thousands of small bricks. The structure is built in the form of a medieval castle with towers and crenellations and portcullises and inner keeps and all the rest. Anyone looking at the finished product might be too far away to see the small individual bricks, but he will see the castle. Now imagine some giant hand coming down and tumbling all the bricks out of which the castle is built, reducing everything to a formless heap. All the bricks are still there, with not one missing. All the bricks, without exception, are still intact and undamaged. But where is the castle? The castle existed only in the arrangement of the bricks, and when the arrangement is destroyed, the castle is gone. Nor is the castle anywhere else. It had no existence of its own. The castle was created out of nothing as the bricks were arranged, and it vanished into nothing when the bricks were disarranged. The molecules of my body, after my conception, added other molecules and arranged the whole into more and more complex form, and in a unique fashion, not quite like the arrangement of any other living thing that ever lived. In the process, I developed little by little into a conscious something I call I, that exists only as the arrangement. When the arrangement is lost forever, as it will be when I die, the I will be lost forever too. And that suits me fine. No concept I have ever heard of either a heaven or a hell has seemed to me to be suitable for a civilized, rational mind to inhabit, and I would rather have the nothingness.
Yeah.
That's the closest I've ever seen to an attempt to address that question. Of course, Asimov himself would not allow himself to be identified as an atheist. He didn't like what Christians had done with the word. He didn't like the connotations that came with it, so he was always calling himself an agnostic. Russell?
An analogy that I like that's similar to the church analogy and is found on our fact page at atheist-community.org is, besides a church made out of bricks, I also compare the life to technologically literate readers to a program running inside a computer. And when you shut off the computer, the program stops running, the physical computer is still there and the energy is still in the wall, but everything about that program is gone because you stopped it from running. I'd also like to point out something from chat room. Jeff Jones suggested a book on the subject of death. He said, try reading the various existentialist fiction from Camus and Sartre, and try Resistance, Rebellion, and Death by Camus.
Hey, I'm looking at the chat screen myself. Jeff Jones, if you're out there and still listening, I found the book An Intelligent Person's Guide to Atheism at this Borders bookstore. Yes. That was 183 and Great Hills Trail. And they have multiple copies of it, of which I only bought one, so they might still have one there.
I found it in Book People, which is on 6th and R, I think.
Book People, and that's all crazy fundamentalist, Wiccan, New Age nonsense.
And they have a pretty good science section and other sections that don't deal. They do have a lot of that crazy stuff.
All right, everybody. Well, that was our show for the day. Thanks very much for tuning in. Tell your friends, your loved ones, your coworkers, everybody you can think of. Tell your dogs and cats if you want to, but not that they'll make
Christians.
Not that they'll make any sense of it. Tell Christians especially. We are here every Saturday from 1 to 2 Eastern Time, and we will let you go with our opening music once again. This is Merely a Man by XTC. Bye, everybody.